Ever wonder why your paycheck has so much money taken out in taxes? Well, today I'm going to explain why the government should take less. Currently, the tax rate in the United States is quite high, and in order to increase economic activity, I believe the tax rate should be lowered. Today I'm going to go over the history of tax, the benefit of high taxes, benefits of low taxes, and a suggested tax rate that I believe would help the United States. So now on to the history of United States taxes. Well, first we're going to go through the types so that you know. There's sales tax. It's a tax at the point of purchase. We all see it. It's differing by county to county. Then there's taxes on certain goods like gas, alcohol, soda, tobacco that are preset in every single state. And he's like, that also includes tariffs, which is a tax on any import. Then there's a state tax, a tax on your inheritance or your will. Capital gains tax, which is simply making money off of money. It's taxing your assets only from investments. So it's usually, it only affects like really wealthy people. Then there's payroll tax, which includes healthcare, Social Security, anything automatically deducted from your paycheck before you even get the money. And then there's the income tax, which we'll be going most in depth about today, and that is just pure profit income taxed by government. So, history of income tax. As defined by Info Please, the 16th Amendment, an expansion of the previous Revenue Act of 1862, passed in 1913, granted the government permission to tax personal income and profits. In 1918, because of income tax, the federal government's annual internal revenue passed the $1 billion mark for the first time, and that is adjusted for inflation. Now, income tax rates. During the first few years, tax was broken up into a simple bracket, with the lowest earners being taxed 1% and the highest being 7%, and that's from the Tax Foundation. Income tax steadily increased with the additions of new programs until the 1950s, post-World War II, where tax capped for the next 10 years, taxing highest earners 94%, middle earners 50 to 60%, and low earners 22.5%. Today, with the addition of new taxes and income tax cuts, the rate is 10% for low earners, around 28% for middle, and 40% for top earners. Now, income tax brackets have only gotten more complicated since their creation, but the federal revenue has increasing is only correlated to more national debt. Now, I have a little chart here. It shows income tax increasing steadily up until about World War II, and then kind of caps as percentage of the GDP adjusted for inflation. So even though the government is raking in more money in internal revenue, it stays at the similar percent of the GDP, showing that taxing citizens for revenue doesn't necessarily work for increasing government money. So now I'm going to talk about the benefits of actually having a high income tax. So it allows for more programs, provides citizens who can't afford certain services, that includes Social Security, healthcare, Medicare, disability, everything. Now, a high income tax also prevents regressive taxes. Now, an example of a regressive tax would be sales tax. So it's 8% here or 9% here. So a good example would be a really wealthy person and a lower earner walk into a store and they both buy one apple or so. And so you both pay a tax on that apple for the sales tax, depending like what the rate is. But that tax is always the same, and it's based on the price of the good rather than your income. So even though it's the same price, you could say it's a bigger portion of the lower earner's income than the higher earners, even though it's one good. So it only affects the person the same, but they're paying a larger portion of their income to the government for it. Because to the wealthy person, 9% is like nothing on a couple dollars. Also, in theory, it should reduce the federal debt, but the federal deficit is complicated and includes lots of debt to American citizens in the form of bonds. If you didn't know that, actually, the majority of the American debt is not held by China, but it's held by bonds and trusts to the American people. So taxing those people doesn't necessarily fix the deficit, as they already own a very big majority of the debt. Also, it allows for solid federal infrastructure, new roads, highways, possibly cheaper energy, easier access. So government structures, in theory, should work on higher taxes. Now, here's the benefits of low tax and why. A high tax doesn't really work in theory. High-priced union workers on government contracts, as well as large bureaucratic nightmares, squander a significant portion of that tax income. As well, allowing citizens to take home more money with lower tax would stimulate the economy and give more consumer money to spend. Also, programs for lower income citizens could be supported by charitable donations, which already receive up to 90% of their money from them, which wealthy Americans usually contribute to significantly. Lower income tax and corporate tax rates attract large companies to base inside the United States rather than fleeing and saving money elsewhere like Barbados or like those little tax havens. It's also easier to understand lower income tax would cut tax loopholes and make it easier for citizens to pay. It would also make wealthy Americans pay more tax, which they currently avoid paying through these loopholes. It's kind of ironic, but low income tax rates have tended to produce similar revenue to higher taxes because small taxes are very hard to avoid. They're set, and they're simple tax codes, when extremely complicated tax codes like our income tax right now have tons of loopholes. You can claim losses, charitable donations, get out of the paying to the government. And that's from austaxpolicy.com. Now, my suggested tax rate. My suggested tax rate is some type of flat tax or lightly bracketed tax hovering slightly above what lower income earners pay right now. I believe the government could shelter it as they squander lots of money already. And around 14% for all earners. 14% is a good nominal denomination, and it would produce similar income as it rises slightly for lower middle income earners, but it greatly reduces those who participate most in the economy, which would be middle and higher class. And with the simple tax codes, many low earners could be positively affected if taxes that greatly affect them, like sales tax, are lowered, which almost has a greater effect on lower income if they spend more money every week than they are. And in conclusion, I taught you the history of tax, the benefit of high taxes, the benefit of low taxes, and why I believe the suggested tax rate should be lower. And with the tax rate being so high enough right now to restrict business, I believe it should be reduced to a reasonable level to let consumers take home more money. And now, the next time you see a bill to add another tax, just remember this speech. Thank you.